Hey guys, and welcome to the show. Viking Coffee. Let's talk about Viking Coffee real quick. Viking Coffee is the best stuff around. I am currently drinking some Viking Coffee as we speak. I'm not sure what flavor it is, but it tastes really good. I didn't check the bag before I put it in there. But store-bought coffee is gross. Don't buy that. I promise you, once you try Viking Coffee, you will be off store-bought coffee forever. VikingCoffeeCo.com. Give Evan Armstrong some love. And while you're there buying coffee, grab a hat and a mug from him as well, because those are super cool as well. Use the code VikingCoffee10 at checkout for 10% off. Cerberus Strength has everything you need for your strength journey. Cerberus, making sandbags. They're making smelling salts. They're making tacky, knee sleeves, elbow sleeves, t-shirts, whatever you need, they have it. They have been providing great products for strongman for years now, and it is about time we see them on the Highland Games field as well as powerlifting. So get in there, hit them up at cerberus-strength.us and use the code REFINESAVAGE10 at checkoff. Checkoff? Don't do it at checkoff. Do it at checkout. Warrior CBD Official. Warrior CBD, created by jiu-jitsu and MMA fighters. Those guys get beat up worse than anybody. I am a big fan of CBD oil, and I gotta say that Warrior is the best I've tried. I love them. If you have some anxiety, if you have problems sleeping, if your wife's a nag, whatever, CBD oil from Warrior CBD is the best stuff around. Take the edge off a little bit. If you have a pet who's afraid of bottle rockets or something like that, Warrior CBD for pets. Give it a try. Warrior 20 off at checkout for 20% off at Warrior CBD Official. Serious Steel is some of the best people around. I just love the guys at Serious Steel. Their customer service is fantastic. The products are great. And you should go there before you go to any of these big giant companies, because the prices are low on all the same products you're going to buy from some big giant billion-dollar company. Also, you can use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off at SeriousSteel.com. Stay Classy Meat, straight out of Bozeman, Montana. Some of the best meat you'll ever have in your life. Small batch farms. These animals are humanely raised. They can go out and actually see these animals and know where they come from. They're eating fresh Montana grass and drinking from fresh Montana streams. It makes a difference in the way the meat tastes. Trust me, no hormones. It's just good tasting meat that's healthy for you. You'll feel like $1 million after you eat it. If you aren't hunting, this is the next best thing in my opinion, so give them a holler. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off. Iron and Stone Strength, right up there near Buffalo, New York. They have a fantastic gym up there and some of the best apparel in the game. Their t-shirts are awesome. They don't look like shit. You can wear them out. They're super comfy. You won't be embarrassed to have some weird-ass logo on the front of your shirt. Check them out, Iron and Stone Strength, and use the code REFINESAVAGE, all caps, at checkout for 20% off. And finally today, Rody Sport. Rody Sport, Justin Rody, former professional shot putter and 2012 Olympian, has his own company right here in Ohio making closed-loop leather lifting straps. Try saying that fast. Really good product. I highly recommend those for you people who use straps with your lifting. Also, they have the shot put glove. So if you are a shot putter or stone putter doing a lot of heavy volume or heavy weighted throws, you want to check this out. Keep those fingers healthy and not bent back over your elbows. You want to keep those things healthy. Check them out. I highly recommend it. Also, check out their Jolly Big Throws Clinic. That's going to be December 21st, 2019 at Youngstown State University. They're going to have some of the best college and pro throwers in the game there instructing. I highly recommend it. Go check them out. Use the code SAVAGESPORT, all caps, all one word, for 25% off products and lectures at rodysport.com. Today on the show, Dan Gillis. Dan Gillis is a awesome dude. I love this podcast. He is a high school strength and conditioning professional. We talked everything high school strength and conditioning. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. I want you to share this podcast with high school football coaches, high school volleyball coaches, anybody who needs some help. It's the high school strength and conditioning is some of the most important thing you can do for a young athlete, and it's so overlooked and so misunderstood. So give them a call, give him a holler, give your friends a call. Use this podcast to help educate them and share it with them. So enjoy it, drink some Viking coffee, and we'll see you at the end. Dan, thanks for having me down.
Great being on. little nervous, never done this before.
Well, that's what you said. You said, so the first thing anyone ever says to me, almost always, is, "Oh, I'm not interesting. I don't want to be on." And we sat down, and the first time we talked on the phone. It was like 20 minutes. And Malcolm Majeski texted me right afterwards. He goes, "Hey, did you talk to Dan? How was it?" I said, "Yeah." He said he wasn't going to have anything to talk about. We sat there and talked for 20 minutes. Before we said, anything.
I'm waiting to see how this goes. If I text Malcolm later and thank him or be mad at him.
Right. You got to make sure you come out good on this one. Malcolm's been on the show a bunch of times. And, how do you know Malcolm?
So Malcolm was our first coach at Olentangy Orange. So he was a civilian contractor at some Army base in Oklahoma, I think. And then we hired him as an hourly strength coach when we got the Olentangy contract.
Gotcha.
And he worked with us for a couple years, and then I was on a staycation for a week, and the Ashland job opened up. Malcolm called one of our other coaches that's been with me for 12 years and was like, "Hey," and he was like, "No, call Dan, he'll be fine." And so Malcolm called and told me what was going on, and I knew right there that he was going to get that job and leave us. And I was like, "I'm going to make it difficult on you because I want you to stay, but I get it. Alma mater, collegiate level,
right.
I get all of that." So, and then we just stayed in contact because he's a great resource.
He really is. He's become, it's crazy because he was one of my athletes that I coached in high school, and he was just this big dopey guy, and now it's like I go to him for information and new stuff.
He has really expanded his knowledge base, and in this day and age, you have to, because it is crazy what is coming into the weight room. Like as ninth graders right now, and for him probably college freshmen, there's a lot of things that he has to undo.
Yes.
And so you better know a lot. About a lot.
Let's I want to get into that a lot, but let's talk about where we're at right now, because this place is insane.
Yes. So we are at Olentangy Liberty High School in Powell, Ohio. It's one of the 4 high schools of Olentangy schools, which I believe is the fastest growing school district in Ohio.
The first thing you show me is the wrestling room, and this is like no other wrestling room I've ever seen. It's like going to Iowa. You go in there. There's 6. I think there were 6 rings on the mats.
Yep, 6 mats.
And then bleachers, and there's pull-up bars along one wall, and it was crazy.
Yes, 6 mats. We do a lot of our crawling and tumbling, warming up, cooling down in there, and then obviously wrestling gets done in there as well. And we have added, I won't call it full-fledged wrestling, but we have added grappling to a lot of our groups. Like girls basketball is grappled, and our O-line and D-line in the spring and summer have grappled, just because we're trying to find ways to keep it interested. And I don't know how many kids in this day and age go out in the backyard and wrestle with their friends. And so we were trying to find ways to help our O-line. It all started with our O-line, D-line, and we wanted to find ways to help them use their hands better, control their body better, so they can go block and tackle.
Are you bringing in a grappling coach? Or?
No, it was just the wrestling staff here has come over and helped. I coached high school wrestling and college wrestling for a couple years before I decided I liked my wife way more than I liked coaching. So I got out of that type of coaching. So I have enough to be dangerous, and when you're dealing with kids that have no wrestling background, we have enough. We have an assistant football coach that does some martial arts and stuff, so he's come in and added a couple things to that phase of our workout. So it's been positive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a jiu-jitsu fanatic, and I train 3 or 4 times a week, and a lot of the hand fighting stuff I've worked with my son, helping him get off blocks. Just try to get hand fighting and breaking his grips on your jersey and that kind of stuff. So and like you said, that's a great point, that these kids aren't getting out and wrestling like we did. It was like set up the makeshift WWE ring, and you're wrestling off your knees or whatever. But that so we're here at Olentangy, and the facility, what'd you say, 2,000 kids?
I think it's 2,200 students, and we have right around 1,000 student athletes.
I pull up, and the campus is humongous. They're over there shooting rockets over in the field over here. So I'm sitting there watching these guys shoot rockets off it. Just really beautiful facilities and beautiful campus, and the town of Powell itself is just amazing.
Yeah, and it's booming. Right across the street, a new OSU medical facilities going in. So this is still growing, and if you make your way either back to 71 or up to the city of Delaware, there's still a lot of undeveloped land. So this school district is still growing.
That's fantastic. Now let's talk about are you the head strength coach here, but you're from Ohio State?
Yeah, so I'm employed by Ohio State Sports Medicine, which is a facet of the Wexner Medical Center, which is a facet of Ohio State University.
Okay.
And so Olentangy Schools has contracted with OSU Sports Medicine, and we put a strength coach in each of the high schools.
Okay.
Now, within OSU Sports Medicine, I'm also the director of sports performance, as well as being the strength coach at Olentangy Liberty.
Okay.
So right now, my staff is 7 coaches, and we cover 11 schools.
Okay.
Some schools we only have a team or two, but the majority of them we have the entire school. Some of the schools also use OSU Sports Medicine for their athletic trainer coverage and physician coverage, some just for sports performance, and then we have some school districts that just use us for athletic training and physician. So our outreach program is pretty large, and then it's customized to what that group or school district wants.
And you showed me, you showed me 3 different weight rooms, right?
Yes.
2, and then and you said you were able to put sometimes 2 coaches going at the same time.
Yes.
Two
So
different sports.
Olentangy also supplies a strength coach per each school. So there's essentially 2 strength coaches all the time in the weight rooms, and then like we talked about before we started taping. Most of our schools also have a physical therapist that comes in for a couple hours a week to do strength, but also be a different kind of eye in the weight room to help us give the best product possible to Olentangy.
You were saying that the one you had here was doing an ACL preventative.
So initially we had a run with our girls basketball program.
Rampant.
Yes, and they had a run when we got hired, and it kind of went away for a little bit, and then it came back for a bunch of different reasons. So we thought it would be a good idea to put somebody in specifically for that. But we wanted to make sure that that everybody knew that we had strength coaches in the weight room, not a physical therapist doing rehab. She was coming in to do a performance training program, because the whole goal was to have these athletes go through this program before they had the injury, not after.
Right.
And then in a clinic at a medical center, the case was always, we'll get them after they get hurt.
Yeah.
And then August of 2008, sports medicine decided to add performance, and that was the first time where we looked at being ahead of the injury. What can we do to reduce it? I know Dr. Chris Kading is our executive director, orthopedic surgeon, and in my interview I was like, I'm going to try to put you out of business. I don't want you to do any surgeries. And he was like, be my guest.
What do you think the major problem is? Because we've seen ACL injuries with girls especially, and I've had to rehab a few of them in my limited capacity as a rehab guy, which is basically nothing. But it seems like it's so rampant with teenage girls with that ACL injury.
Yeah, and I think like there's so many different, and our if I took you down to our Crane Institute, we have a research lab that is out of this world, and it's because of stuff like this, and it started with the ACL, and there's so many different things out there. They talk about quad dominance. I call it posterior weakness. No, your quad is normal. Your backside is what's weak, because when they hear quad dominant, all they want to do is run. They don't want to do any strength training for their legs, because they're like, well, I'm already quad dominant. We're like, no, you're not quad dominant. You're just weaker on your backside, and we have to try to get that catch up.
That was always my thinking with it, was that was one of the major problems. But
yeah, and so you like we talked about, nobody has free play anymore. Yes. Everything is very, very regimented, very, very organized. So they almost become robotic in their sport, that which when you're playing in a live game or practice, it's not robotic. You have to react and everything. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Getting into a jumping program way earlier, and I'm sure we're going to cover youth sports and youth coaching and all the crazy
this. Yes.
But I think you jump in your sport, we'll get you jumping as quick as possible. Whereas our lower extremity program, we start with learning how to land first. And so I think it's just jumping way too often, too early in your growth spurt or whatever, and not understanding the importance of landing and deceleration and all of that.
It's that's a really good point, because it makes sense to me, because 9 times out of 10, that's where you're going to get injured, is in the landing.
Yeah, right.
And it makes sense to me that you teach the landing first. One of the things I notice that isn't addressed, when I see a lot of these CrossFit athletes blowing out their Achilles tendons, and they're doing backwards jumps off the boxes and just rebounding into the next one, and none of them are landing correctly.
Right.
And there's no acknowledgement of, hey, maybe we should just have them step down, or maybe you need to learn how to land correctly. And but you keep seeing. I know a couple years ago, Julie Fouché, who was one of the top, she was CrossFit's sweetheart. She was everything. She blows out her Achilles tendon jumping backwards off a box, and that's pretty much the end of her career.
Yeah, and with our jumping sport coaches, it was a big struggle when we would go into the weight room with a volleyball or a girls basketball, and we're not doing any jumping, and I'm like, well, you jump enough.
Yes.
Let's work on all the other things that you don't do well or don't do often. But I'm pretty sure you're fine with jumping, because I've watched your practice and you jump a lot. So let's calm on the jumping, and I think that's where sport-specific training took a really, really bad turn. You got people attaching rubber bands to lacrosse sticks and calling it sport-specific training, and you got these crazy jumping programs, and then you just reinforce the single sport, or the people that do their sport year-round, whether they're doing multiple sports or not. It just became too much of one thing that didn't help them end up doing their sport better.
Yeah, and I think you get a lot of these sports performance centers who obviously are there to make a profit. I mean, I am too in my gym, but parents want to see cool stuff, or stuff they saw on College Game Day, some athlete doing, or they saw some YouTube video of Auburn doing this. Or one of the things I had to deal with was swim parents who wanted me to do more repetitive type shoulder work for them, and I'm like, they're already doing this movement swimming all the time, and so when I would look for other means to train them, a lot of times they would get, I had one lady who yelled at me. I mean, just berated me up and down, and then I had another parent. I didn't tell the parent to do it, but the parent was like, I know this seems crazy. He knows what he's doing. He trained all these girls. They're doing really well. Just let him do his thing. And now she's happy. But for the first couple of weeks, she was not happy with me at all.
I had the same situation. The girl just finished her freshman year, and we started training. I think we had trained 3 times, and I got a text saying that I made her daughter slower, and that her daughter will address it with me our next session. And then the daughter and I, and we're still training, and she's going to be a senior. She's committed to college. She is elite. And I was like, Jordan, do you understand what we're trying to do? And I didn't really make you slower. You do understand. And she was like, yeah, but this was the only thing that we've done differently.
Yeah.
And that's how swim, especially, that is how they are wired. And it took me a while to understand the mind of a swimmer and the mind of a swim parent.
Yes.
Because they take the cake. I used to think it was distance runners and distance coaches, but swimmers take the cake, and it's hard managing their drive, their dedication, their work ethic, because it is through the roof.
Yeah.
But managing their rest and recovery and how important, like, I want them to swim faster just like they want to swim faster.
And at the right time, when it counts. Not in practice or in meet.
The only thing that I could, because I'm not a swimmer, I never was, and I don't think I ever want to be now that I've been around it for these last couple of years. Yeah. Every time they compete, there is a time given to them. And I never had a sport like that.
Right.
I was either in a team sport or with wrestling. It was very simple. You went out and wrestled somebody else, and there was an end. But they have a time, and if their delusional parents think that time should get faster every time they compete, then that's where we get into trouble. And so we talk about, like, do you really believe that you should get faster every single time you compete? And then when they hear it from somebody that has no idea about swimming, they can look at it differently than what they have since 6 years old when they started swimming.
Yeah. And maybe when they're 6 years old, that can happen. You know, I mean, I was a shot putter, and I can't imagine thinking every time I went out that ball was going to go just a little bit further.
Right.
You know. And then a lot of times what they want me to do is, I've been training this kid all year long, getting him ready for this meet. You know, we always talk about what's your big meet? Is it the meet to get you to state, or do you want to be good at state? And they want me to taper them off a month and a half before the meet, and I'm like, we're going to lose everything by then.
Yes.
You know,
the taper is like the mystery, and then everybody swimming the same distance is a mystery to me, and nobody can give me a rational answer other than, oh, this is the way we've always done it. Right. And I'm like, I work for a medical center.
Right. I need numbers.
I cannot say this is the way we've always done it. I will get fired.
And you should get fired if you say stuff like that.
And so taper, I don't understand at all.
Yeah.
I don't understand your 50 free and your 400 person doing the same practice.
Right.
I'm like, most track programs don't even do that.
Right.
And so then that's how I try to relate it to a swim person. I'm like, a sprinter on the track isn't doing what the 2 miler is doing, and then it's we're trying to build mileage.
So I had to get real creative. So the first swim girl I ever trained ended up being my best swim girl. She was she got voted as the athlete of the decade for her high school, and went to won states and went Division I. But she was starting to get overuse injuries. She was a freestyle swimmer, and all she was training was freestyle over and over, and just mileage. So going into her senior year, we kind of sat down, and I said, look, Paige, this is what I want you to do. I said, I want you to tell them that you wanted to do breaststroke this year. And she's like, I hate the breaststroke. She goes, I said, yeah, but you're going to be the best one, and they're going to go, oh shit, well now I guess she's got to practice breaststroke too. So at least it was a different swimming motion. And I said, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fake female problems, you know, every once in a while to get you out of the pool, because they were just mileage. And she had her best season of her life as a senior, just lifting weights. She already knew how to swim. She'd been swimming since she was 3 years old, you know. And so you just had to outsmart the coach, you know. And so we faked a couple things, and you know,
that's awesome.
But it shouldn't be that way.
And then you had a girl that was really good,
and I based all my other swimmers off her. Everyone said, "Well, he coached Paige."
Yep, that's how I got my like. I had figure skaters for a while.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, no, Alexi was really, really good before she started training with me. She only came to me because she wasn't allowed to be on the ice for a while because she got hurt, and her doctor, who was an OSU doc, said, take a little break, and they don't take breaks, so they just switch to strength. And I was like, so understand, Alexi was good before me.
Right.
And then it was the same thing with swimming. Well, you train Miranda. I was like, Miranda was a state champ before I started training her. And so my job is to keep her as a state champ. And they're like, okay, and then I was like, then I just stopped and I was like, okay, whatever you think I did for Miranda, you got it.
100%.
And that's just, I went to my the one frustration I have about my profession is I never see them compete because we're usually training another group or another kid. But I got my first swim meet like 2 months ago down at Denison. It was pretty mind blowing. The whistling and the heat.
I was going to say, how hot was it in there?
It was unbelievable, and it was really hot outside. But the heat in the natatorium and the whistling. The whistling was pretty insane. And then everybody told me, oh, Denison's not even one of the hotter natatoriums. And I was like, okay, then maybe I'll just go to Denison's from now on.
I'll just suffer in this one.
Yeah, it was intense. It was intense.
Yeah, I don't get to see. I used to try to go see games all the time, and it was like, first of all, like we talked earlier, I'm not a sports guy, so it's super hard for me to sit there at a game, and I have to go to my son's football game tonight. I know by like halftime I'm gonna be like, oh god, I gotta get out of here, you gotta do something. But there was just too many kids to go and check out that many meets. But you don't get to see them. Yeah,
I worked at a private sports performance place in Maryland for 2 years, and we were just transitioning to we had a bigger staff. When I got there, the company was only 3 months old, and we worked out of the trunks of our cars. We borrowed tracks from high schools. We went into high schools, and then we finally got a facility. Our staff was getting bigger, and we built into everybody's schedule the ability to go and watch. And then my wife got a job here in Columbus, and we moved, and the rest is history. But it's very, very important. And I know right now with me at Olentangy Liberty, pretty much the only time that I'm not training somebody is Friday evenings.
Right.
And so everybody thinks that I just love football, which I do.
Sure.
But that is the only time that I'm free to watch anything. And then I have my own daughters in stuff that I'm going to for sure see them more than any other kid I train. That's usually what I tell my kids all the time is, oh yeah, my three take precedence. As much as I love Liberty, my three take precedence over them. But it is important to watch them, and you learn a lot. In the competition. It's one thing to shoot to a practice in the gym or something, but to watch them compete is special and needed, and it's very beneficial when we're programming.
Yeah. I know I learned a lot. I started swimmers and volleyball players at the same time, and I don't think I'd ever watched either one of those two sports ever, so I had to go and figure out volleyball too, which is a fun sport to watch. It's pretty intense, and the pounding they take is something, like you said, is going to help your programming for sure. When you came in, did you get any blowback from coaches who had been training their kids the way they wanted to train them, and did you have to kind of convince them that you knew what you were talking about?
Yes.
Without going into any specifics, just...
it was, what I realized months in was, it was all about wording. Because initially it was the perception and my inability to communicate correctly was everything you guys were doing was horrible. That's why we're here. Which in like I just told somebody the other day, I'm like, we're not getting hired by schools and programs because they're weak. Weakness is never a concern. Everybody is strong. It's just how you use it. Are there injuries in the weight room and those different things? So I finally worded it where, okay, there's better ways now. And that's all I do all day is strength and conditioning. I'm not in a classroom teaching science. I'm not doing any X and O for a specific sport. I am doing X and O for the weight room. And then once I worded it better, that really helped a coach not be so defensive about me telling him or her that their current program was not very good.
Right.
And then here in me specifically, like I had to take back squat away from some schools and from some sports,
right?
And
just because it was so ugly.
Yeah, and we had a lot of low back issues, and it would have been, it was quicker. I was going to clean it up quicker by taking it away for a little bit than to try to get a high school kid to lighten up his squat and not have a coach flip out. So I just took it out altogether. And now I am not a back squat guy. I am a split squat guy. It's interesting. I was not a huge fan of Mike Boyle when I started really thinking about how I was programming, and then I just found every time I was looking at changing something, I always ended up reading or listening to something from Mike Boyle, and I was like, man, there must be something to this guy. And then even more so, reading his stuff and watching his stuff and all of that. I'm just like, if my job in the weight room is to make you play your sport better, I have to check everything that I've ever done. And when I was coaching football, we called it self-scouting. We would check tendencies and like, were we always calling the same thing on 3rd and 7, and would a team finally figure that out? And so I had to self-scout my own program and see what was I doing, and then were the results what everybody needed. And so I'm like, no, I have 80 people sometimes at one time in the weight room, and their spectrum of squat ability is outrageous. So then we looked at, okay, what do we need to do to be able to squat better, and ultimately, what do we need to do to play our sport better? And I realized that for me and my program at my school, back squat was not the best way to play our sport better. And then dealing with you had to be able to explain, maybe to an entire football coaching staff, how this was going to benefit, because those two things always went hand in hand.
Yes.
If you're a football program, you squatted.
And you squatted crappy and super high.
Yeah, and it didn't matter because you were squatting.
Yeah.
And so being able to explain why I was coming at them this angle was probably more important, and then selling it to the kids. Yeah. So I knew I had to do some trade-offs, like a really, really heavy hex bar deadlift made a kid not as mad at me when I didn't let him back squat.
Yeah, right.
And never going higher than 5 reps on bench, because a high school kid cannot pick a correct weight to do 8 times. So they're going to end up doing 5 anyways. Yeah. And so making sure that their bench weights were really, really high in there, getting their reps, made them forget about not back squatting. And then talking to them about how we equate or how we add up our split squat weight. And then they finally believed me that it made sense,
right?
And then they were good.
Yeah, that's always the it's always the thing dealing with kids, is you have to convince them, and that's fine for kids because they're dumb, and that's what kids are. But it's different with coaches, and I've found the same problem with back squats. We back squat at the gym, but mostly for our kids program. They start off with the goblet squat and learning the goblet squat correctly, and then we move them to a front squat where at least if a weight gets too heavy, they're not bending over, they just drop it, and there's no need to be spotting them. And that's been my suggestion is single leg stuff, goblet squats, and front squats with coaches. Just for the safety of it. Yeah. It's just so much easier. And like you said, you're not training these kids to be powerlifters. You're training them to play their sport.
Yeah. We talk all the time because was it last fall? We have a very, very consistent boys track only group that comes in. And last year senior class was just on me. And finally I got done. I got tired of fighting it. And I was like, okay, this next 4-week block is yours. You can. I was like, there's a couple non-negotiables, but you can pick the majority of the program. They all put back squat in, and I was like, okay. And I bit my tongue.
Yeah.
I'm like, I will only talk about safety with you guys because this is your 4-week block. So they did the 4-week block. We have an endurance we have an endurance med program within OSU Sports Medicine, and we do gait analysis and we do all this stuff. And so they all had their running mechanics videoed and 3D analysis and all of that. Every single kid in that 4-week block came back lopsided. One leg was unbelievably stronger or weaker, however you look at it, than the other. And they never messed with me another time about back squat. and I was like, yeah, I get. So that's why we use some of like the functional movement screen and everything. Sometimes you have to put something down on paper for them to believe you. And I didn't know that they were going to do that running testing. I was just sick of talking to them about back squat, and I gave them that block, and it worked out perfectly. And they all ended up running faster, which is the only thing we talk about. And I tell them, because we make everybody cartwheel, and we make everybody do round offs, and we do all this stuff. And I was like, we're only doing this stuff to be better at your sport. I was like, we don't make worker outers. All right, we are not in the business of making worker outers. If you want to go do a fitness, and I'm not here to bash CrossFit, but if you eventually want to be a fitness person and compete in fitness, that's fine. We're not doing that.
Right.
We're not doing that here. We are here to play our sport better.
Yeah. And my guess is if they decide to do that in the future, they have this nice base.
Yes.
That's underneath them that, wow, I can do all these different things now, and it makes CrossFit a lot easier for them.
Yes. And we'll get other coaches and parents ask, well, what if my son or daughter goes on to college and they have to power? And I was like, then that coach at that college will teach them how to power clean the way that they want them to power clean.
You won't have to break any bad habits.
I coached at Muskingum College for 3 years, and I loved kids that didn't power clean in high school. They were so much easier to teach than someone that did it not the way that I was teaching it for 4 years before they got to us. And so now I'm like, yes. I was like, I'll email if I'm working with an individual client that's eventually going on to college and they want me to look at the program that they're about to do. I will do that. I've reached out to college strength coaches. They don't really very few people understand how my role fits in with OSU. Right. And they're like, you're not under Mickey Marotti? I'm like, no, it would be like, his weight rooms are really cool. Yeah. He's awesome. But no, I am completely separate. I do nothing with athletics. And they're like, oh, that's strange. And I was like, yep, it is. Yeah. It is to most people strange, but I will reach out to coaches, but I'm like, no, I don't want to spend that time when I could be just making them better at their sport. Let that coach do that for the next 4 years. Yeah,
and if you're adding that kind of, we do power cleans and we don't do snatches of any kind. There's, especially with high school kids, there just seems to me to be a lot easier way to get them explosive than teaching them these high level, highly technical lifts that they can also injure themselves from. I mean, I can teach a kid to box squat or throw a medicine ball or in seconds, as opposed to, or even lift an Atlas stone. If I have them doing like a D-ball or an Atlas stone or flipping a tire, all that stuff is, it's all hip extension, quick hip extension, but it's a lot easier to teach and a lot less injury prone.
Right. We just started sprinting, and that's our explosive movement.
Jeez, that sounds pretty explosive.
Yeah. I'm like, who would have thought? And so now everybody's asking like, why do I need to sprint? And I was like, think about it. I was like, when we went back to the sports specific, I'm going to make you run. I'm going to make you run fast with your lacrosse stick in your hand. I'm going to make you run fast dribbling. And I was like, and then we had to figure out dribbling. We had to figure out cradling. And then we stopped running fast. Yeah. So now, we are just going to run fast. And I was like, and that's going to take the place, because I'll still get the power clean. I've been here 7 years. OSU Sports Med has worked with Olentangy schools for 7 years, and I'll still get the question about power cleaning and back squat. And I was like, I'm going to do one better for you. I was like, we're going to run really, really fast. Yeah. And we're going to jump far, and we're going to jump high, and then I don't have to worry about a bar falling on anybody. Yep. And they're like, oh, okay.
That makes sense, right? Yeah, it's fighting that this is the way we've always done it, and it's fighting former high school meatheads, which I was a former high school meathead, but you got to keep learning and keep evolving. We talked a little bit before that in most schools, now you're living the dream here, but in most schools, the role of strength coach is given the same significance as the team manager or, Joe Schmo, the JV coach, loves lifting weights, so let's put him in charge of the weight room. And it's treated like this insignificant part of the training of your athletes, when in fact it's probably the most significant thing you can do with them. Right.
We will usually go into a school that has some type of teacher that likes to work out, and that's who was the monitor, and sometimes they stay as the monitor, and then we just come in and do our thing. But there is a push. I get money and all of that stuff, but they've made a big push with making sure everybody has a certified athletic trainer. Mm-hmm. I think the strength coach is the next phase of that. There's a new group called the National High School Strength Coaches Association, and
that's through NSCA, right?
No, it is completely separate. It formed in December of 16, and they did their first national conference in February of 17.
Okay.
And they are rolling. They do an unbelievable job with development, and they're the best conferences that I've ever gone to. I've learned so much. Actually, Mike Boyle was the pre-conference this past summer, and we had 6.5 hours of basically all of Mike Boyle's programming, and we were blown away.
Yeah.
And then you get, and so you have this. I'm not a back squat guy, and then the very next day you're getting talked to by 3 guys that back squat, and they don't. There's no bias. They just want you to be able to get as much information as you can, and then go and form your own program. Like with my staff, I have staff members that still use back squat, and I'm perfectly fine with that because they can explain why it fits in their program at their school, with their kids, with their coaches, with their equipment, and we're good. But you can go into any of our weight rooms and say, oh yeah, that's the OSU template, because we all start in the same spot. But the Strength Coaches Association is really making a push for schools to really look at, are you safe? And if you're not, what are you doing to remedy that? So they have PowerPoints of meeting with administrators and principals, and basically selling a certified strength coach to be in your weight room.
I would be so psyched if that became the standard for these high schools. We've talked, and again, I'm not going to bring up any specific programs, but we were talking before the show about my frustrations with dealing with football coaches who aren't sure what they think they're sure,
right?
But they're not even willing to take any advice or help.
Right.
And when I went and tried to volunteer my services, I came at it as not that you're doing anything wrong. Here's my credentials. This is what I do. These are who I've worked with. Do you need any help?
Right.
Free of charge.
Right.
I'll help you. Anything you need. If you just need advice, if you want me in the weight room, and it's just like, no, we do it this way. This is the way we do it.
Yeah.
And that's super dangerous. And it's just going to take, and I don't know, it should just take 1 or 2 kids getting hurt, but I'm guaranteeing that's happened a million times and it hasn't changed things.
Right. And I don't, and it just, like with Olentangy schools, at the time of us being hired, the superintendent was a former football coach.
Yeah.
And I actually had one of his athletes when he was still coaching at Muskingum. And so they knew that there was a better way.
Yeah.
They just didn't know how to go about adding it. And so then we met. I was like, oh yeah, Dr. Lucas, I know all about your program because Josh Kaufman's shoulder came out every time he made a tackle. And I would think that was the strength coach's job to help that shoulder.
Yeah.
He was like, well, I was like, I know you were the strength coach.
Yeah.
And so then it was easy. Then we talked about And there was a lot of former football coaches in the
Yeah.
in the first meeting, and I was like, guys, it's not like it was in '85. I'm sorry,
Right.
but the goal is still the same. And I think what happens is everybody sees that football is football, right? Football is football, but every year our ninth graders come in weaker. Mentally and physically, and so I'm doing them a disservice by doing the same thing that I'm doing with our seniors, that I'm doing with the ninth grader, because they don't have that foundation, they don't have that backyard free play, and I don't, not even playing in the backyard, just going and doing something active where you're not being told what to do.
Yeah,
like we will pay to field grounders and get in a batting cage and have a machine pitched to you.
Right.
You will pay for. And then we lost just going out and moving and making your own rules at something and picking your own game. And so we had to address that in here. Like my warm up is like 50 some exercises. I was the stretch coach and around Powell. I was the stretch coach, and then Ted Cox, who's now at Olentangy Berlin, was at the original, the Braves. He was called the yoga coach. Uh-huh. And I'm like, why do they keep, I'm like, we lift, we deadlift. And like, why do they keep calling us that? And then I'm like, okay, they did a couple arm circles, and then they went and lifted. That's what they went from that to all the mobility work that we're doing now, and moving your T-spine. What is a T-spine? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so then we went back and we're like, listen, this is why we have to do all of this. And then when you tell the coach, I'm like, Coach, you think any of these guys go and climb a fence or jump out of a tree? No.
Or even get any kind of real PE where you learn to do things like jump rope and do calisthenics and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, those days are long gone.
And when you talk to these coaches, football has changed. You have better equipment. You have new innovative offenses and defenses. Why would you think that the same weight program you were using? Right. Because to tell you the honest to God truth, weightlifting in schools is not a long ago thing. It's not an age-old process, because when I was lifting weights in 92, when I got in high school, 89 through 92, me and my 2 or 3 meathead buddies were the only ones doing it. It certainly wasn't sanctioned by the football team to go do. Uh-huh. And lo and behold, I wasn't a great football player, but I could do all sorts of crazy shit on the football field because I was stronger than everybody else, because I was lifting weights. Right.
We had bigger, faster, stronger. Yeah. So I was 90 to 93 in high school, and we did have bigger, faster, stronger, and so now
was a big boom back then. Huge benefit.
Huge, and so especially when I was in Maryland, I would tell my boss, I'd be like, if they do 3 sets of 8 power clean, they're bigger, faster, stronger, we will for sure sell them. Yeah. This will be so easy. And when we came in, and I would try to find a lifting card, and I'd be like, yep, they're 3 sets of 8 power clean, that's bigger, faster, stronger. And then, so I'm like, our business is thriving because of bigger, faster, stronger, because no one ever looked at that and said, hey, we should probably adjust this part of it. They just got this big, huge box sent to them, and it was easy.
That was the only, if you had that back then, oh, wow, you were in.
Yes. And then we got lucky at my school because we had Dick Hartzell, the rubber band man close. So we had the rubber band platform. So we were doing groin work and extra hamstring work, which you just didn't get when you were just squat, bench. Like, I don't ever remember doing a pull. I don't remember pull-ups, or we might have had a lat pull-down machine in our weight room. Our weight room was pretty small back then. But I don't ever remember doing a pulling exercise until I got to wrestling season, because we had pull-up bars in our wrestling room. Right. And so there was things that you could just, thinking back now, that you could expand on to make better. But we go into some of these schools, and they're still doing exactly like what I did in 92.
Yeah, they got the Stefan Fernholm posters on the wall and him hurtling, and
like, I'll get parents now, and like, so we try to do a lot of parent talks, because like, like, there's no telling what a 15-year-old is going to take from the weight room and then go home and explain to their parent. Like yesterday, we had a lot of new people, and like I tried to explain them why we're doing cartwheels and why we're doing ground offs, and I'm not going to put your weight on a bar and make you press it over your head in the weight room. But I don't care if you fall on the wrestling mat when you lose your cartwheel. And so we started doing parent talks, and now because some of the parents are like around my age, and I'm like, dads, if you were an athlete in high school, please don't come up to me after this meeting and say, hey, when I was in school, we did this. Yeah. I was like, I just want you to pause right now and think about that statement. And they're like, oh yeah, and then sure enough, someone will come up, hey, we did. And I'm like, I know, I did. Yeah. I did 3x8, 4x6, 5x5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yep. I lived that for 3 years. Yeah. And so I try to tell our coaches and our kids, the only thing I'm trying to do is put you in the best position to win. Like, I don't even talk about injury prevention anymore because no one cares unless they get hurt. Yep. And so I don't use it when I go and talk to new schools and everything because it sounds cool, but no.
Right. They're not on the internet like we are looking at stuff.
They don't want anything to do with injury prevention. Yeah. Even though we're going to do it.
Strong and fast.
Yes.
Make them jump high.
And I'm like, okay. I'm like, and I was like, and understand, I don't care what looks good and what you get good at in here. It's just if we're progressing for you to do your sport better. Because we don't go out to a coin toss and they bring out hex bars. Yeah, right. And at coin toss, you have to hex bar more than the other team. We're not doing that. So this is one thing that we're going to use, and we think it's very, very important. But let's pay attention to how we're lifting and what it looks like and what our teammates look like, and not all this other stuff that we see. Like every morning I check Instagram and I'm like, okay, what am I going to have to talk about today? What is LeBron doing on a Bosu ball today? And I have to talk about. We had a kick, muscle ups was a big kick for like 4 months, and I was like, I didn't see any muscle up videos on Instagram today. Why is muscle up now the hot topic that everybody wants to try or do? But it got crazy for a while, and now it's bouncing on a Bosu ball.
Yeah. Speaking of, when we talked about Malcolm earlier, who was one of my athletes, I've got another kid who works for me, Zach Pepe, who runs the majority of our kids class that we call the Agogi. So both Malcolm and Zach came through my program in, I don't know, I can't even remember, all these kids graduated, but probably 2004 for Malcolm and 2007 for Zach. And when Zach took over the kids program, he had these kids bench, squat, deadlift, learning to power clean, all this stuff. And they're 12 to 15 years old. And then I worked one of the days, I came in and did a program on Saturday, and I was having them do basic calisthenics and flipping tires. And none of them could do a proper push-up. Sit-ups were ridiculous. None of them could do pull-ups, and they were flipping a 150-pound tire, which is what I use for the old ladies in the class. So I had to bring Zach in. I said, look, we're done. We're done with all the power cleans and benching and squatting. I said, here's our standards. We need they need to be running a 10-minute mile, which is ridiculously slow, but let's start at the bottom. They need to be able to do 10 Marine Corps style push-ups where you put your fist on the ground, they touch the fist. They need to be able to do this many sit-ups. I want them to be able to do goblet squats with a 35-pound dumbbell and do some pull-ups. And I said, because what you and Malcolm did, when you and Malcolm came to me, you were so much more advanced than these kids just through physical education and not having a cell phone and going out and playing, that we're getting these, for lack of a better term, super soft kids, both mentally and physically, that you guys were way in advance of when you came in. So we need to go back to ground zero with them and build them up. And then we can start talking about bench pressing and squatting down the road. And I mean, I'm sure you're getting that too with your kids.
So we got lucky at Liberty. From January until August, we have a middle school program. And last year's senior class at Liberty was our first group of seventh graders to go all through. So it changed everything because I'm like, yeah, we're doing things with our 12th graders that you should have done in 5th and 6th grade. So I always tell the superintendent, and I was like, not all of the schools do a 7th and 8th grade program. The majority of them do. I was like, but Mr. Rafe, we need to start at 5th grade if we're going to combat it. And some of our schools, like when we first started doing this, I think 2007 was when we first started doing high school contracts. And from that point on, every year, as we added schools, it didn't matter what school district we were in. 9th graders were coming in worse physically and mentally. Yeah. And then, so it took us like 3 years to realize, and then a lot of those schools had 9th graders potentially playing varsity, whether it was soccer and I was like, we can't get a 9th grader in June and have them ready to play varsity competition in August. So then we started looking, and it took us a couple years, and then here it was it's been 5 years now, and it's been huge because now there's some things that we don't have to do anymore with our high schoolers that we did when we first got here, and it's I don't know, I feel. It's easy to say they do too many video games and they're on social media too much, but they have a lot more going on than we have going on.
Oh, absolutely.
My 5th grader was up until 10 o'clock at night last night doing homework. We're talking about ecosystem in our backyard, and I'm like, what grade are you in now? And then she can't get up, and then everybody's getting yelled at. And so they have a lot going on. That some of it's not their fault, but we still have to take care of it because we've been asked to do a job, and that job is to make sure that they play their sport at a really, really high level. And so selling them on, okay, our 55 exercise warm up, it's free play. Yeah, that's like we're skipping and we're jumping and we're cartwheeling and we're bear crawling. It's because I know you can't go do that in the backyard because you have 4 hours of homework when you get home. And so fun. It's like fun's a bad word to say in the weight room, but no, it is pretty fun. And I tell them, I was like, it's fun watching you get better at cartwheels. Because I know 6 of you for the first couple weeks you skipped it and you walked and you didn't think I saw you, but I saw you. And now. And now look at it. The wrestling coach here, he was in for open mat on Tuesday, and he was like, it is night and day different from the spring of what they're able to do right now. Awesome. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Coach Marinelli. That's great to know. That's great to hear, because when you're in the middle of it coaching, you sometimes don't see that progression. And so that was really, really good to hear. But they're up against all of that and sitting and backpacks and like, we have to do something to undo that. And right now that might not be a pull-up. That might just be setting your shoulders back and engaging your stomach. That like you have to practice that. Then being able to explain to a coach that might have been in this profession for 30 years, like, coach, no.
It's a different kid.
You never had to brace your stomach. You probably got punched in the stomach by your brother.
Knew what that meant.
So you never had to engage your stomach.
That's funny, because that used to be my cue all the time. Stomach tight, like someone's gonna punch you, and I'd walk over and just it's squishy. I'm like, what? Have you never been punched in this? And then you realize they haven't. Mom stopped that. Mom didn't let that happen, you know. My brother, I tell you what, that motherfucker knew how to brace his stomach because he was getting punched all the time. But we talked about my son and my not happy with him going from 8th grade football to Friday Night Lights in a year. But my wife was a CrossFit regional athlete. I was a pro Highland Games athlete. This kid could not have been more prepared to play as a freshman, because I tell this story all the time. As soon as he was able to walk, 8-pound medicine ball, I'd drop it off the couch, he'd pick it up, put it on the couch. And we just do that for hours, and he'd come out to the gym and work out. So, I mean, he he can do cartwheels, and he can jump, and he can run, and he can play. And we would make him go outside and play with kids. And we said we were trying to raise this kid like he's in the 80s.
Yeah.
Just send him out. And now, when you see the kid compared to his classmates, he's got delts and pecs and abs, and he looks jacked, and all his friends are like little scrawny, because they've never had to do any of that stuff, you know. But they're all expected, because that coach could have played as a freshman, and they're expected to jump that level, and it's not the same kid as he was when he was a freshman.
It's hard, and you feel for him, but like somebody had to make that, like, who's going to stop this madness?
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to take this heat. About changing our program and our philosophy and our style. Because what is the best for the kid? And I tell my new coaches all the time, I'm like, we do this because we love working with the athletes. They've always been the last person that we thought about in programming. Like, how are we going to make the parents happy? How are we going to make this coach happy? And then I was like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. So now we start with the kid, and then I make sure I explain it to everybody else.
Isn't that funny that you have to explain it to the adults and not the kids?
And like some of it is just the craziness, like we talked about, the craziness that you see in social media, and explaining to them that that's not the best way to do it, even though it looks cool. And I need you to toughen my kid up. And so there's a couple coaches here at Liberty, we talk about it all the time. I'm like, I cannot make anybody tougher. I can't. I don't believe that, and I don't use exercise and fitness as punishment. But we're going to make them more confident, because we do a lot of handshaking at this school. I absolutely love it. I tell all of my other schools, I was like, oh yeah, our groups have to shake our hand after practice. Or after the lift. And they're like, what? And I was like, yep. I was like, we have a lot of hand sanitizer, but yes, they shake hands, and it is amazing. Week one, a kid dead fishing you, not looking you in an eye, and then in 5 weeks, the sleeves on their shirt are gone, and they can look you in the eye when they shake your hand, and you're like, we got them. And that is huge. And I was like, so we talk about confidence and discipline and leadership, but no, I'm not making you tougher. Is that going to make you stay in your stance better? And are you going to ultimately play your sport better? Yes. If somebody wants to think that that's being tougher, go ahead. I don't, because I think people are just wired the way that they're wired, and we're just going to give them all of the tools to work the way that they work it. And some coaches disagree with me, but that's just how I look at this.
We get kids in all the time, and I would say that mom always brings them in. And I almost prefer it, because dad tells me how awesome their kids are. Or they'll tell me what a pussy the kid is. And mom just brings the kid in. You know? But the first thing I do is shake that kid's hand. And if he gives me the dead fish hand, then I have to teach him how to shake a hand. And I talk to my wife about this. I say, I've gone from being a strength coach to running man camp. So you get these kids in, and I've got to teach them the basics of how to be a man, and how to have discipline and courage and strength and honor. What the hell do I know about it? You know, I mean, I know how to teach you how to exercise, you know, but now you're dealing with that. And we do workouts. You know, when you're doing some kind of conditioning workout where you're flipping a tire, or throwing an Atlas stone around, or having to do calisthenics and run, I think it naturally makes you a mentally tougher kid. But I think you're absolutely right. You can't. I used to have a football coach who would have me. He goes, "Wow, they really slacked off at practice today, so I want you to really get them in the weight room." No, I'm not going to do that. Why? So they can hate the weight room and not want to do it, you know? But yet the handshake thing is huge with me, and that's the first stepping stone. You know, get these kids ready to go.
My 8th grade English teacher, Ms. Ellard, we shook hands every single morning, and her classroom was right across from the main office. And if like an administrator was out there, she would call them in and have the administrator come and shake our hands. I'll never forget it. And Ms. Ellard, it was amazing because I was so worried about being cool. It was like middle school and even high school was a struggle. And like that was huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
I'm like, my English teacher taught me how to shake hands.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
My jiu-jitsu instructor, Paul, and I've never even said this to him before, but if you shake his hand, now this is a guy who's been doing judo and jiu-jitsu since he was like 7. And you shake his hand, and it's like a piece of wood. I mean, it's so hard. And then he squeezes your hand. You're like, geez, oh man. But that's impressive to me. You know, every man should have a handshake like that. You know, that you grabbed a hold of somebody's gi and had to throw them around. You know,
I shake my daughter's hands all the time. I'm like, don't cut it short.
Yeah. Yep.
I was like, and look, and we're looking in the eye.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Dad, and I'm like, nope, that's what we're doing.
It's all this stuff that's important, and that as strength coaches now we're becoming that. I always talk about my Uncle Butch. So my father was a fantastic guy. You know, he went, all these time, 40, 50 years of work and never missed a mortgage payment. That's pretty awesome. But the guy I looked up to physically as a kid was my Uncle Butch. My Uncle Butch was this big jacked, he was born probably in the early 40s, and nobody lifted weights back then except for him. And he was always the best athlete. He was all state football, and he'd get thrown out of amusement parks because he'd win all the stuffed animals, But I can just remember him being this guy who I wanted to emulate, big jack guy, athlete. Everyone was scared to death of him, even though he was a super nice guy. But we as strength coaches now have become that for a lot of people, because they go home and they might see Dad sitting on the couch watching Ohio State football with a big bag of Cheetos on his. Nobody wants to look like that. Nobody wants to be that guy, even though that guy might be awesome. He might be taking care of his family and doing all the right things. But physically, 10-year-old kids and 12-year-old kids should want to see someone physically impressive and go, oh, I want to be like him. Yeah. And we had guys like Arnold and Stallone and the Road Warriors and Hulk Hogan, that we wanted to look like,
Right. Like when they imitate me, I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yep.
So who does it? Who does it the best?
Right.
Come on, give it to me.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Now that I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and 6-year-old daughter, I watch boys way more than any other group when I go and volunteer at their school. I pretty much hate boys.
You have 3 daughters.
Every single second, and then I'm like, I gotta watch them with their dad. Like I gotta see their dad. One of our first schools that we got at OSU, got to go to a football scrimmage. I was 7 for 7 matching the kid with their dad, just sitting up in the stands watching the scrimmage.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh man, this is why after 15 years this kid is this way.
Yes.
And what can we do to help? It's not bench press. It's accountability and leadership, and so those things are important. They do a really, really good job here of leadership.
Yeah.
So like almost every single program, they have leadership talks. It's great. Now a part of practice, because it is easy to pick somebody that's an idiot to emulate, because that's all that the media shows. Right. They only show idiots. Yeah. They don't show anybody.
Some rapper on a private jet throwing strawberries at a stripper. It's like, first of all, he doesn't own that private jet. He's made one song. The record company took all his money. This is all just a big show. Yeah. And even if it wasn't, you don't want to be that guy. Yeah. Who do we have? They have The Rock. That's all they have, as far as physical.
Yeah, because bodybuilding's not popular anymore. I would say CrossFit, the Rich Frodings, the Dan Bailey, those guys, they're probably the closest, because they're the most impressive people that are on TV more.
How about Franco dying? Franco Columbu dying last week.
I did not see that.
You didn't see that? Oh my God, yeah. Franco died swimming in in the sea in Sardinia. He had a heart attack and died. And I was putting it out there, and people were like, "Who's Franco Columbu?" My own son said that. I go, "Have I not shown you Pumping Iron?" He was like, "No." I go, "All right, that's on the agenda for this weekend." Franco's gone.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How old?
78, 74, something like that.
Holy cow! No, I did not see that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, no. How am I going to continue this? We'll find somebody else. So the boys and how they act, and then so now I'm just like, okay, my job is make sure my daughter knows what's good, what's not good, and what you're going to stand for, and what you're not going to stand for, and then am I going to have to go over this kid's house and stomp his dad's?
You probably, the thing about it is, I'm a huge fan of history in general, and especially military history. And, in Sparta, they raised the women and the men very similar. The women were wrestling, and they were learning leadership and courage and honor. And you develop these warrior women just out of spirit, not anything else. And Jason Gardner, who's a former SEAL, and if I can find the article, I'll send it to you because it's fantastic. He wrote an open letter to his daughter, and he read it on Jocko Willink's podcast a couple of weeks ago, talking about, you are not going to be my princess, but this is what I'm going to expect of you, and this is what I'm going to give you. And it was beautiful because it wasn't, you could have taken princess out and put prince, and it would have applied for men too. It was really amazing. I'll have to find that.
Yeah,
but
because my wife's a child clinical psychologist.
Well, that helps. Yeah.
But we scream at our kids a lot. But our saying is we are making strong, independent women. So when they come down and figure it out.
Yeah. Because
you are a strong, independent woman, and they're so sick of it now. Right. But we're like, yeah. I have a couple of friends that have daughters that are now first-year college students, and a couple of them go to Ohio State. And this first weekend that they were there was a false alarm Buckeye alert for active shooter, and then there ended up, so that was all cleaned up, and then there actually ended up being a shooting on High Street at the McDonald's. Wow. And a male shot another male, so no big deal. But there was like 15 Buckeye alert text messages that I get because of work, and then they get because they're
great.
Students. So I woke up in the morning and I saw them, and I was like, oh man, I hope these guys are okay. And then I saw one of them's my neighbor a couple houses down, and we were both walking our dogs, and I was like, how'd your first weekend of Ohio State College go? And he's like, not very good. And then we just talked through like, did we do enough to make sure that and all of the girls were fine. Yeah. And one was actually in her dorm room sleeping and was like didn't respond to anything because she was in her room sleeping. And then the next day they were like, no, I was fine. And then they're like,
it's going to be a blessing and a curse that you guys get those text messages too.
Oh yeah. And so I talked to the guys, and they're like, yeah, it's hard, but this is part of having daughters, and then they're now freshmen in college and everything. So you want that warrior, but then you're like, no, I will drive down there right now and pick you up.
Well, but that's part of you being raised as a warrior. I mean, that's the way you should feel.
Yeah.
But you want to get to the point where they don't need you for that. Even though you still are willing and able and wanting to be there, you've done your job if they don't need you for that.
Like, my wife works for Children's Hospital. I work for OSU. She's considered an adjunct professor, so we have a pretty decent percentage of tuition remission for college.
That's nice.
For 3 daughters, huge. And I'm like, Kara, we have to prepare as they're not going to want to go to Ohio State. And I have a day date tomorrow with my middle daughter. We're going to the Ohio State Cincinnati game.
Yeah.
They love Brutus. We're doing everything in our power to make sure that they love Ohio State. Right. But I was like, we need to prepare as if they want to go to Cal or somewhere. Yeah. And she was like, no, we will just make them. And I was like, no. I was like, my parents didn't make me go, and your parents didn't make you go anywhere. So no, we won't do that. We'll prepare for it, but we'll just really, really hope that
you do what you can, you know.
So
I've told my son that he can win an Olympic gold medal in the hammer, or he can go be a Navy SEAL. Those are his two options. We were prepare him. That's all you can do.
I'm a twin, and my dad was a meat cutter. My mom was a housewife. We had to get school paid. We had to get college paid for. Or we had to go to the military. Those were our two options, and those we knew that's where everything was at for high school. And so my parents were very, very appreciative that we ended up getting college paid for, and we didn't have to go to the military. But that's like I don't train kids like that anymore.
Sure. Right.
Especially with like some of the schools that can afford to pay for what we do. I don't have an athlete where the only way that they can go to college is if their sport allows them to do that. Now, I have some athletes that get to go to other schools because of their sport, but never because of the amount of money. And like I really struggled with that when I started in this profession. So when I was in Maryland, we had $60,000 private school kids.
Yeah, right.
Especially down in Maryland, just because of the state of public ed and everything. And I'm like, what? Yeah. And so being around that, I'm like, oh, this is like, what's their motivation? Like, if it's not to get college paid for, they just like the sport. And then you would find those kids, and we did, where we were in Maryland, we were just outside of Annapolis, so we did have a lot of, not just the Naval Academy, which we had a lot of Naval Academy kids, but we had West Point kids and Air Force Academy kids, and that's like a completely different animal of student athlete or person for you to know that at 16, 17, 18 years old, they were the most interesting people I've ever been around. And like we had, I remember their sisters, they lived on the base. Colonel Rupp was their dad. He was like our motivational speaker, and he flew in Vietnam and he flew in Iraq. It was awesome. And then here are his two daughters, and one of them ended up going to the academy, and then one went to like Colorado or somewhere. But they were just different. We had a kid. He was a third generation midshipman. He was really different. Yeah. And but trying to find the motivation to the kid that it was a big struggle. And then I just came to grips with it. Like, I'm dealing with the now. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can right now to help them with what they want right now. And then college it's
up to them.
Is up to them. But at first I was like, I wanted to gravitate to somebody that was like me. And there's very, very few of those in the school district that we're at. And we have a lot of kids that go on and do college sports here. It's just, they didn't have to go through.
They don't have the struggle.
And I wouldn't want it, like, now that I've lived it, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
Sure.
I tell everybody, me and my brother wanted Nikes in 6th grade for school shoes. And we had to go work at my uncle's house, who just moved back from Texas back to the Youngstown area, and he was a jerk. Yeah. And he was hard to work for, but we wanted Nikes. Yeah. So we went every day and did whatever he said, and we let him yell at us because we wanted Nikes.
I can remember getting yelled at or getting made fun of in 5th and 6th grade because I didn't have Reeboks. Reeboks were the big thing back then. All I wanted was Reeboks. My mom was buying me these crappy shoes from the supermarket or something, and I was getting made fun of. But the high school I went to was all the dads were like blue collar guys who everyone had money, but it was because these guys were working overtime, so you learn to work hard. And now the steel plants are closed and the Ford plants closed, so all that's gone. You just have a different breed of kids again than I remember. I was down in Bradenton, Florida with Kibway Johnson a couple weeks ago. He was working with my son in the Hammer, and he works for IMG Academy down there. $70,000 and for tuition, and like you said, I don't know what is the motivation when
Right.
when your parents have enough money to send you to college for $70,000 a year, but they seem to be producing some pretty awesome athletes.
And I think like for the like for that level, because IMG they deal with some unbelievable football talent. It's
the football stadium's insane.
Yeah, like are you the Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, or you that next tier down? So I can see that as their motivation. Hopefully,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm on a text exchange right now because my entire wedding party was my offensive line my senior year of high school, and we're playing a team. My alma mater's playing a team that we haven't played for in years, but we were in the same conference when Youngstown was still a little bit bigger. And our one friend, his son is a sophomore quarterback that plays a lot, and so bringing back good memories of getting Nikes and what put me in this position. I remember in our high school weight room, a gym had closed down, and we got this selectorized preacher curl machine, and every Friday was preacher curl burnout, and our coaches would do it and everything, and so this game is bringing back good memories.
That's awesome.
So 92 was our senior year of football.
I graduated 92 too. Yeah. Well, so 91
was your senior season. Yeah.
Senior
So we were 92. Graduated in 93, and I still 3 times a week talk to.
And you're from Youngstown?
Yes.
You know Sean Shoemaker out there? Sean, he runs Team BSS out there. I don't know. He's about the same age we are, but I don't know if he went to high school there or not. He's 800-pound deadlifter.
Okay.
Runs a gym out there.
Yeah, it's interesting because my high school just dropped to Division II in football, so there are no more Division I football programs in the Youngstown area, and that's how small it's gotten. And but there's like my nephew's an 8th grader at Canfield, and he goes to this gym to work out, and they're there. CrossFit gyms are there.
Yeah.
But there's just not a lot of people there. Sean Shoemaker.
Team BSS. It's like a strongman and CrossFit gym. I'll check him out online. He's something else, but he's been on the show a couple times too. So let's finish out by if a school is interested in getting this at their school, what do they need to do?
So we try, like, we have some schools where we just have one sport, and then so that's usually our in, and then we'll try to meet with the athletic director or principal or administrator, but they could just contact me personally. Our outreach program, we have 2 athletic trainers that run our outreach program, which is the majority of our athletic training services, and then our other niche programs, like we might go out to a running club and do some work with. That all balls up under our outreach program, and then sports performance just rolled up under our outreach program 2 years ago. Yeah. So any of us, and then we just go out and we try to see what they're thinking, because sometimes schools, like, they don't even know how it should be set up, and then we take the lead a little bit more on that, and then sometimes they've had maybe just a private person come in and help, and they want a medical group because then they could ball up everything together. Yeah. And so then we just go through that whole process. It's so customizable, because like here I do scheduling and programming and all of that, and then at some of our other Olin TNG schools, their stipend position is the role, because some of our schools have the weight training PE class, and then that person tends to be the after school person with us, so they're there a little bit more, so they have a bigger role of programming and meeting with coaches and everything. So it just all depends. I would say our four setups are pretty different, even though we're in the same school district.
It's malleable. You can, whatever the school needs. You can.
And like we have one school where we had just gone in and trained the boys lacrosse programs, which I don't like do. I love lacrosse. I really like the coach, but that's hard because of the multi-sport kids
Sure.
and just dealing with a kid that has like 3 different lifting programs that he's being just bombarded
and
with.
could be completely different from each other. You were saying that that's one of the good things about it is these coaches know that their kids are lifting. They're lifting in season and out of season, and it's they don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about anything.
Right.
When I got my first strength and conditioning job with a high school, I went into my old alma mater and I went to the coach. I said, "Look, I don't want to run your defense. I don't know anything about being a linebacker coach. Give me the weight room. I'll give you a better weapon, and then you do whatever you want with it." And it worked out great. And I got a coach who was like, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea," and that's it is. I hate the phrase "stay in your lane," but you can have the best defensive back coach in the world. They might not know anything about what we do in the weight room,
right.
and. It's vice versa too. I don't know anything about coaching or defensive backs, And
I like so I'm the 4th strength coach that Olentangy Liberty has had. So initially when we got Olentangy, I hired 3 coaches, Malcolm being one of them, and then I was just going to supervise because I feel that as the director, I would best help my coaches if I was there able to watch them do their job. And then at Liberty, I think 2 months in, the guy that we had hired had left, and at that time our positions weren't full time. So like being able to keep Malcolm and Coach Cox and Coach Cox is still with me. He was one of the originals as hourly strength coaches is a testament to them not needing a lot of money to live. So I covered when he left for a year or so, and then we brought a guy in, and then we were here together, and then he was here, and then he left to do he did an unpaid internship with Penn State. Now he's assistant director at Old Dominion. He wanted to be a college strength coach. I get. So then I had to come back, and then our administration made the decision to keep me here because they were on their 4th coach. And this is the best part of my day. Like being with the kids is the best part of my training day. And so then I direct outside of the time that I'm here. So that's been good. But we started doing the last strength coach started. We like coaches coming in and watching. If you want to help, Coach Ricker started doing coaching education with them. And so, because we would go to some schools and you would have 10 coaches in there helping, which is great, but you have 10 coaches coaching a different phrase. So he was like, okay, and he was a back squatter. This is all we say when kids are back squatting. When we deadlift, this is all we say. So I love when coaches come in, and I want them to understand what we're doing because I think we're doing a good job. I think it's beneficial, and we want what they want. They want to win, we want to win. And so come in, but if you're going to help with deadlift, this is all we say. And this is why we do this exercise this way. I don't care what you saw on Instagram. This is why we do it this way in here with this group.
That's why when I hire coaches at my gym, they're not in the fitness. I build them as athletes because then they know my system. There's no confusion.
And that's huge because a 15, 16, I mean, you're standing getting ready to lift 200 pounds, you can't get that much information. But we need you to be safe. And so I think once I'm like, oh, you think my warm-up's a joke? Go through it. And then if that happens, I got them. They're like, oh, that. I was like, I don't know why the kids just call it a warm-up because it's so much more than that. And they're like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, yeah, and this is why. And I know I'm not going to put a bar over their head, and so we'll do it in here. And I don't have time to do 25 reps of weighted carry. So I can crawl 80 people in here. We can't do farmer's carry with 80 people in the weight room, so we get it in here. And then so this behind me, the other stipend, it was his first time helping. So I'm like, you need to understand how we how we set everything up. So we did a little impromptu.
Right.
That's our template. That's how we set up. And then after that, like, I'll let the kids, okay, we got 2 posterior chains today. I pick one, you pick one. You get to pick the lower body. I'll pick the pull, you pick the push.
Yeah.
And then I found that ownership.
Yeah.
And I'll let coaches pick.
Yeah.
I was like, we have some non-negotiables.
Right.
Like Nordic hamstring. No one gets out of doing Nordic hamstring curl.
Right.
But what do you like? What do you think?
Yeah.
And then we're adding this category. Like we just add like the sprint. The sprint edition has been huge.
Yeah.
We added it last winter. Our track, boys lacrosse, and football all lifted in the same off-season group. And I begged the track coach, and he sprinted all 3 teams for me. It was huge. And now we've added it with all of our other groups, like girls basketball, running as fast as they can without the basketball in their hand has been huge for them.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. I jabbed the coaches at it, and I was like, but you guys, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
But trust me that I want what you want, and no, it doesn't always look like it should go in with girls basketball.
Right.
But no one can explain to me sport specific other than mimicking the motion of their sport, which we don't want.
And the other thing is sport specific at this level is most of them need base. They need the base. They need basic stuff because they don't have what we talked about earlier. Sport specific is great, but even the stuff you're talking about that's sport specific, like sprinting, is base. That's
right.
The base stuff they need as athletes, and that's awesome. I think you're doing amazing work here. It's super impressive. I want to thank you for having me down. The facilities are amazing. I'm super psyched with what you're doing. I hope more schools decide that this is the route they want to go, because I can't stress the importance of it. If my son were in this program, I'd be super jazzed about it.
Appreciate that.
All right. Anything else you want to promote before we hit it?
No,
You were so boring that this went on for an hour and a half. So you were all afraid.
You did a really good job of not letting me get off track or
corralling.
No long pauses. No, this was good, and I love talking about. I don't think I do, but then I love talking about what our athletes are doing, because they trusted this process, which is. That's in this huge. Day and age is very difficult, especially when it's different.
Yep.
And like we always say, change. Like if,
not good.
Like
right?
If we do like 3 Tuesdays in a row where they're warming up in the weight room, and then we move to the turf or something, like you could see, and I was like, it's okay. Or when we add a group, like we had an overlap of 2 teams on Wednesday, and I'm like, guys, it's going to be okay. They will be gone in 15 minutes. And then I'm like, girls, it is okay. They are not worried about your lateral band walk right now. So it's going to be okay. And then
take a deep breath.
Yeah. I'm like, it's fine. And I'm like, change. No, change. I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah, and we will definitely do this again sometime, because it was amazing. And I'll let you know when it's going to be released. Right. And thanks.
Awesome.
This has been the Refined Savage. See ya.